My name is Ruben Stephen. I'm a current sophomore at MIT studying mechanical engineering and computer science.
Akib July. I graduated from UPenn, class of 2013. From Philadelphia, New York, Nigerian-American, entrepreneur, brother, son. Talks to me. My career, for the most part, has been around early stage startups, and tech. And I started in the life sciences. So I studied biology in college, and then I pivoted pretty early on into the space I'm in now, which is more like entrepreneurial. It's been a very multidisciplinary journey thus far.
You're also into like the AI and like the automation side of it. So I was wondering, like, what was the connection from the life sciences to the automation?
I guess starting with the automation side of things, I'm working on an automation agency right now called Pentridge Media. And that actually started with something called Pentridge Manor, which is a content house that I began working on in 2023. And I had an Airbnb in Philly end of 2021 that a friend of mine basically told me to put it onto Peerspace while it wasn't booked on Airbnb. And I learned that Peerspace was basically kind of like Airbnb for content. And so people would rent it out to do photo shoots and videos. We've had artists do music videos and things like that. And I didn't know much about it at the time, but I saw the people that were coming into the space, and I was really enjoying being able to connect with different creatives. And that's not something that happens with Airbnb. You know, people just kind of come in, come out. And with Airbnb, they don't really respect the space at all. Like, you know, with the content, a house, a concept, like people typically leave it the way they come to it, and then you get to connect. You actually get to connect with some of these guys that are coming in, and so there's so much talent. I've learned how much talent there is in Philly too. So much talent, so much young talent too, and people just like really just grinding and trying to do the right thing. Honestly,
Gotcha.
yeah. And so then so that's Pentridge Manor, and then Pentridge Media started out of that, where it was, so I did a podcast previously for we worked on it actively for about 3.5 years. It's called the Pepper Soup Talk Show, and it was around the African diaspora. But basically, I developed skills around digital marketing and media and editing. And so Pentridge Media was actually a way of being able to take skills out of learning and package them into something that I could offer as a service. And so it was through my learnings actually of I was learning about how to market myself online, about the best ways I can just go about building a business online. I came across automation. I noticed I was using AI for a lot of what I was doing, like editing and things like that. And so, and then that AI space started to, I guess, become more mainstream, if you will. And it was definitely like a natural. This AI automation concept was naturally going together. Like even a lot of people, when you talk about AI automation, they think of it as the same thing, even though obviously AI and automation are two kind of different different concepts, right? But that's how I ended up in that space. So started more with editing content, and then led into lead generation, and then I led into like where I'm at now, like the AI automation.
I guess like, yeah, it's like I'm curious, like, how do you define that distinction between AI and
Yeah. So I would say automation was and we're talking digital automation. Okay, I guess you also have physical automation when you think about the mechanics and
robots?
robotics and whatnot. So digital automation, I look at something that's been here for a while, and it's typically a way of being able to take something that you do manually online, and that's repetitive,
Yeah.
and be able to have it done automatically. And so it may be in regard to marketing, maybe in regard to sales. Those are the two avenues I've typically you know done it with, and I've thought about it with, so that could be in regard to, let's say, text messaging or email or content. Now when you think about the AI part of it, I'd say earlier on, especially when I first started getting into the space, it was more like infusing these large language models into these automations or automated workflows. So you would have these like low no code tools like make.com, where maybe if you have let's say a email automation that's automatically sending out an email for you, whereas typically it would be something that is already pre-written. When you infuse the large language model now, it could be something that is a little bit more creative because each email might get sent out differently because it has chat GPT or one of these large language models as a part of it. And so earlier on it was more along the lines of that, and that was what it was in a very practical kind of sense. I think very earlier on, I say not very early, but earlier on, there was a lot of hype around AI and AI automation as a concept. But that was kind of like what I looked at as like the practical way of what that was. But then I think as the AI space has been growing and it's been progressing, and as some of just these concepts have become more real, honestly, now it's also like what it looks like to implement AI into your business. And so I look at that as voice agents, and then now even coming across like you probably see like these like browser agents that like will take control of your browser, and and you can have it do you can create a query and have it do tasks. So it might be uh, what I envision is that you'd be able to, let's say I have a make.com automation that I personally would run. um, I envision being able to use one of these browser agents to run that for me. I think right now what these browser agents can do is like more so like what you yourself can already do. So maybe you're prompting it to go send out an email, or prompting it to deliver like a particular kind of notification for you daily, or to scrape a competitor in an industry and present the results back to you. So the browser agents, the voice agents, um, and and I mean, what else when it comes to that? Those are, I'd say, two of the bigger ones right now that I think is just becoming a lot more practical. But that's really from a business standpoint, like a lot of what's been on my mind around like what is really like makes sense for people's businesses right now versus what you're building towards. Because I think that because of how quickly the space is moving, there's
Yeah.
also conversation of like it is important to be building to where things are going,
Yeah.
because there's certain. I remember like even earlier on, I would do things like chatbots and whatnot, uh, and I remember like kind of like working through different use cases, and I would maybe stop halfway through or stop three quarters of the way through. 'Cause I'd be like, I don't think this is actually feasible or practical enough to really be helpful within like a business and a real use case. And then a couple weeks later, you see an improvement in the technology or in the platform you're using, and then all of a sudden it's not feasible. So that's definitely like a constant like balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I think it's particularly like on my mind because I'm thinking of like I'm taking a class called Design and Manufacturing, and like one of the first, because I'm in the beginnings of the semester, like one of the first things they have you do is like, okay, get very comfortable with understanding the design requirements and freedoms of a given problem you're trying to solve. And it's like, yeah, I was making this solution with the idea that I had this big design constraint, and then like
Mm,
it'll come out like 2 months later, like, oh yeah, no, they fixed it. You don't have like
mm,
now you can like shift your entire strategy. I don't know. I think that's
mm.
coolest and most like frustrating parts. So
What,
yeah, I guess
what
say again.
I know I'm the one technically being interviewed, but if I
Yeah,
can
no.
ask you a question,
Hey, go back. Yeah.
what has it been like? Because what year are you at MIT?
I'm a current sophomore, so I just
So
started sophomore spring on the 3rd of February.
what's it been like going through college in this time where there's so much change happening? And because I also think, and I mean, you're in a technology school, so I imagine this more like forward thinking. But even I
Mm.
think sometimes about like curriculum, and sometimes like how things take time to catch up in the curriculum. So I've been wondering like what when you see certain things that are happening on the outside versus what's being taught in the classroom, kind of like the discrepancies, you know, behind that when things are moving so fast. So kind of curious, like, is that what that experience is for you?
Yeah, like it definitely plays a factor. Like I think I was talking to one of the people at this conference that I'm at about that exact topic about like, oh yeah, the content specifically you're learning is most likely going to be obsolete within like 2 to 4 years. But I would say one, as a result of being at MIT in particular, I'm a bit fortunate and that gap is a bit shorter than it would be at like a typical, say like other state school or like
Yeah,
a community college, et cetera. Just because MIT is like a lot of the times on
at the
that, like they're
forefront.
the cutting edge doing the research. So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the person who's doing it is literally teaching my class. All right, cool.
yeah,
But even then, I think it's yeah. Like as a student, what I've come to like the way I've come to conceptualize it is that I'm not like the biggest value add from going here isn't going to be the specific content itself, but it's going to be one the process of like getting the skill of learning fast because of the fact that everything's going to be constantly changing. Like I think something that the MIT education does particularly well is stress test you, especially for like the selection, like the filter they put on is that a lot of the kids who get here are not used to being stress tested in that way. And so they're
mm,
like, even if you were top of the class, like super crack, like they'll make like there's things here to where you can find that limit. And then
yeah,
through that process, you learn like, okay, when I'm stress tested and or there's a bunch of new information constantly coming at me, how do I adapt and move to it? And I think the frameworks have been particularly helpful with that.
mm,
And then also the third thing, so like it's also the something else that I think is particularly boonful about the higher education system still, like regardless of it not necessarily being the best for like I want to gain this skill, go here, is the community and networking opportunity that it provides.
yeah,
Especially since I go to MIT, like I'm with the kids that are most likely going to be those AI engineers. So it's just like
for sure.
I know what you're not
Yeah,
exactly what you're working on, but like I could take like I'm a
right.
mechanical engineering major, so I'm not
Yeah,
exactly like, in the computer stuff, but I made sure I'm taking a minor in it, so I have like some like awareness and
mm,
like ability to work on that same level, so I can go to
yeah,
some. But when my homeboy is like a CEO of some AI company, I'm like, hey bro,
mm,
how you doing that? And then like when
yeah,
he,
yeah.
yeah, that's my like overall approach. I don't know if I apologize if I didn't answer your question
No,
correctly.
no, no, you did, you did, you did. That's what's up. Although it sounds like MIT is also like a very unique experience too, relative to like your average college, right?
Yeah. Very very unique. It's yeah, I don't know, very unique because I just came like I'm in the middle of I don't know if I said it on recording, but I'm currently on day 3 of UPOP's team training workshop.
Mm,
So I'm currently on a team and like they're essentially forcing us to like like I'm feeling the exact ways in which an MIT education and like the people that are here are kind of different.
mm,
It leads into questions I wanted to ask you about like background because you mentioned you had done higher education within the life sciences.
yeah,
And pretty much the higher order question is like navigating these like I don't even want to say upper echelon, but like higher brow sorts of spaces as a black
yeah,
particular.
yeah,
Because I'm from Haitian American descent. I'm from a particularly like not particularly low income, like I don't got bread like that part of South Florida.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
now I'm here with like kids who do not have that
mm,
same background or problem.
yeah,
And especially since they're super smart, right? It's
yeah,
like you had a very different upbringing and things you value are slightly different from me who's like it sounds kind of shallow, but a good portion of like why I came to MIT is for the financial compensation that I know I can get as an MIT.
mm,
The fact that like my primary objective is fixing my socioeconomic status for my family.
yeah,
And like reason why I said that is because it causes some sort of like a little bit of friction due to
yeah,
the backgrounds and like that hyperfixation on intellectual pursuit here. And so I
yeah.
wanted to ask like how's that been in your like professional / academic career so far?
Mm, it's a good question. So I'll say, I mean, it takes me back to college for myself because I graduated from UPenn, and I was class of 2013, and I think that what's always been big for me is, and definitely was big for me back then as well as this community, like finding like-minded people, like, and I feel like typically, regardless of the year you're in and like the cohort you're in, there are likely other people that you can relate to that are there. Uh, and you may not always find them at first, but like they are there. And I think I was very fortunate that I found people pretty early on that I, you know, to this day, still some of my closest friends that we came from, whether it was we came from similar backgrounds, whether it was we came from different backgrounds or even different cultures, um, we had very similar values. and usually that meant like family. Usually that meant um, just like valuing friends, camaraderie, similar sort of like desires as far as like all thinkers, uh, pursuits in live sports, and I'd say that's what's always was big back then. And I think that what made my Penn experience very different than a lot of honestly a lot of other people's is that like I found community there, but like I
Mm.
also uh, I could say maybe it found me in some senses because these were people who I naturally definitely like connected with. But even if it doesn't happen that seamlessly, there are people there. Like you can find community there, and I'm not sure how MIT is in regard to the different communities on MIT, but I know like Penn, we had Maku, which is like the Black Cultural Center. We had these different organizations, UMC. We had, and all these organizations I definitely tapped into, and that was like a key piece of my Penn experience for sure.
Mm. Yeah, that's because a question I was going to ask for like specific organizations. I'm glad you enumerated them, and just for
Yeah,
like I guess the equivalents at MIT slash like the also the general Boston area. I feel like that's another boon of going to school here is that there's a lot.
yeah,
It's a college town, and so like
yeah,
even if there might not necessarily be the most representation at MIT itself, I do have the
yeah.
option of going to like Harvard's Black Men's Forum is one I've
Mm.
attended events for. Uh, Brothers United from Boston University, but at
Okay.
MIT in particular, like and NSB, like National Society of Black Engineers,
Yeah,
like our chapter is very useful, like very has been very helpful in like providing that community to me, as well as
yeah,
like the general like there's a greater Boston community of NSB chapters at the individual schools,
yeah.
and then there's also our Black Student Union. And I just want to give a shout out to like my friend Alexa Brown is working on a club called GASA, which is Generational African American Student Association,
Mm.
and it's really interesting. I wanted to like you had mentioned that you are of Nigerian American descent, and
Yeah,
you had mentioned a bit earlier how like you were involved in, I guess, the thing about like the African diaspora overall.
yeah.
Going to ask like how like which generation immigrant are you? Like I'm like me personally, I'm second generation. My mother and father were born in Haiti and then immigrated over and had me like when they were about like 30.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sitting here, second gen, Nigerian American. Both my parents born in Nigeria, born and raised in Nigeria, and they had me here. And yeah, second gen Nigerian American. I actually get confused with that sometimes. I'm like, am I first gen or am I second gen? I feel like people would be kind of like mixing them up sometimes. But yeah, I'm what you are. It sounds like.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask like, how do you feel that contributed, if at all, to like your, I guess, approach, mentality towards both the academic side, but also the side of the college experience?
So I don't know how Haitian parents are, but African parents,
They don't
they don't,
play.
yeah, they don't play at all, man, at all, at all. And so, yeah, growing up, I mean, I just grew up in a very, just, my parents were disciplinarian, especially my father, and
Mm.
I can still hear his, rest in peace, but he's no longer with us, but I can still hear his voice in my head sometimes. you know? So, yeah, so I just always had a mentality of, having the excellence was the expectation, and
Mm.
so I carried that. I carried that with me. But yeah, also always value community and family. I think that was also came from my parents, but also just my culture too. African culture is very communal, and we care a lot about community. And yeah, and then I think in regard to even just building community around the African diaspora, a lot
Mm.
of that has just come from my love of my culture, and also being I consider myself a Pan African, and
Mm.
so connecting the global Black diaspora, that's always been something I've cared about, and I've been very into and intentional about as well, in ways that I can. So we started an organization 2019 called One Jollof, where
Mm.
we
Mm.
host.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Even though we know Nigerian Jollof is the best Jollof, but you know,
That might have started arguments in the comments. I'm not gonna lie.
we started One Jollof as a way to connect the diaspora, and so we would host these different events in Greater Philadelphia area, uh, all centered around food. So we had a chef, shout out to the chef Aziz, and we would do these Afro brunches and mixers, things like that, and then that led into when the pandemic happened and our events basically got shut down. We started our podcast called the Pepper Soup Talk Show at that time. Yeah.
I guess like because you mentioned how you took that particular like care and like desire to educate yourself on your culture. I
Yeah.
guess I don't want to go too far into it, but like being in these higher levels of education has also shown me the other side of people who have like that might be a part of their identity, but they've chosen to, I guess,
Mm.
I don't want to
Sorry.
necessarily say forsake because that's me being a bit judgmental, but there's people who
Yeah.
have not been educated on the specifics of their Black culture. And so I guess like,
Mm.
were there any resources and or like places to start like educating oneself on that, I guess, topic?
Yeah, I would say some of the. So I remember when I was at Penn, actually, there was a program right before I started school called Africana,
Mm.
and it was a program for Black students who were coming on campus. It was week long, and that was really instrumental for me early on there, and I learned quite a lot during that time. And then while on campus, I would say these organizations that we're a part of as well. So whether it was PASA, Pan African Student Association, Black Student League, uh, the United Minorities Council, all these organizations, you would meet people who would, sometimes you would be connected to resources in that way. Whether it was literature or classes to take. I remember there was this one class I took. I think it was my sophomore year, my junior year. It was called PACE.
Mm.
Uh, that was real interesting. It's like a cross cultural um, connection type of course, and one of the things I learned after I graduated from school was
Mm.
how many resources were on Penn's campus that I didn't even tap into, and there's certain things I actually tapped into after I graduated, particularly around entrepreneurship, like startups, and that's when I got into that space. During undergrad, I was mostly in the sciences, life sciences specifically, and so just in general, it's like all the resources you could think of are there. There's so much wealth on that campus that you don't even think about it if like on that level. I remember those one guy I spoke to, um, shout out to Ochek, who came to
Mm.
he did his undergrad at Penn at 30. I think he was like 30 when he did his undergrad at Penn because he had a
Mm.
whole music career beforehand. So I was thinking about like his perspective being an undergrad on campus at that age. It's like you're looking at it from like a whole different lens because you also live all this other so much life now, so much more life now. And so I think a lot of times as students, you don't even realize like like you're in a place of privilege and it's like there's all these resources here, but how how how
To the one
deep
extent, yeah,
it,
like
yeah. It's like maximize it, like, yeah.
So because okay, like to that point, I feel like I very much am victim to that naivety of like I just
Yeah.
haven't lived it. I got here when I was 19. There's only so much you could have done before that. So I guess
Right.
like I'll filter it a bit because I particularly care about entrepreneurship as well. But I guess
Yeah.
like if there were like categories of opportunities, if you could go back and speak to yourself like entering college, like which ones would you try to pursue with more intent, I guess?
Um to be honest, I'm not sure how much more I could have done differently.
Mm.
And you may be able to relate to this in the sense that I didn't get all that much sleep when I was in college. So so I was also an athlete too. I ran track and field,
Ooh.
and so I ran track and field. I studied biology. I was doing science research. Like it was just like I remember my coach saying one time, "You have." I can't remember if it was a coach or it was a teammate that was saying you have four options as a student athlete. You can you can sleep, you can focus on the sport, you can focus on your social life, and you can focus on sleep, sport, social life, or academics. and you can only do 2 at any given time.
Sheesh. I thought you were about to say 3, not even.
Yeah. So it was so basically this was always something that was
Constant juggling game, man.
yeah. And so sleep was like therefore pretty much out the question, you know. And yeah, man.
Yeah, you know it's funny. Like, I had made.
I ain't got the answer, Sway.
Yeah. I'm dead. But yeah, I had made because I had made like an Eisenhower matrix, and there's like okay, importance and urgency, like in that. But ended up going into the eliminate box. It was like sleep and low key social life. I'm not gonna lie, and it's like I don't know. I think it's. I don't know exactly how to frame this question, but it's overall just like I want to like the theme of like sacrifice. Like you can't get something from nothing, and so like sacrifice and I guess prioritization. Like how do you decide? Like what has for you? Like what has guided what you've decided to sacrifice in different seasons of your life?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I think I look at my life as almost seasons, and I try to embrace the season that I'm in. And I'm also a very spiritual person, so like you know my relationship with God too. So I'm always kind of thinking about okay, what's like trying to understand what season am I in, and what should my focus be on in this moment or in this time. And as I think, oftentimes we can get caught up in this idea of wanting to be in a certain place or wanting certain this is like the idea that you can have it all. I think it's like Oprah that said that you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. And so embracing the season that you're in. I think in college, one balance I did have was sometimes just kind of saying fuck it, to be honest. Like I remember I was in this class called it was vertebrate biology, I think, and there was a night of I don't know what kind of music do you listen to?
Oh, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of basic. I'm hip hop and R&B heavy.
Okay, cool. So it was so Jay-Z and Kanye Watch the Throne tour.
Yeah.
And it was in Philly, and this was the night before we had a midterm exam, and the day after, I remember we still went to the concert. We still went to the concert, but then we came back. We pulled an all-nighter, like literally into the exam, and so it was things like that. But then that was like one of my more memorable experiences, and I had people who I was able to share some of those experiences with as well, like who are also, they're also bio majors or studying kind of tangential type of things, and so, and then when I look back, it was like those were like the most memorable experiences that I had. Like remember when we did X Y, we went to the Watch the Throne concert and we pulled the all nighter, and then I probably had track practice at 6:30 in the morning.
Shit.
So, whatever. So yeah, I think it's just really for college. I mean, the other thing about college too is that it's just you're never going to have another experience like this in this kind of way, where you're on a campus with people who are mostly around your age range, all kind of a similar sort of intent, and like that's the sort of environment. And so after and you realize you definitely like realize that like after you graduate, it's like I've had few, and that's why like the people I even connected with when I was in college, like they're pulling people who I pulled all nighters with, people I was in the library with, like this the depth of like those relationships, just because of what you went through together in a lot of those cases. So I think all in all, it's almost like saying like really identifying your community is big.
Yeah. I get like to that point of like a lot of the times your bond is formed by like you can be around somebody, but the connection gets formed for real when you go through those like formative experiences, like when you're doing an activity together. Like I think like especially having played sports, like you could probably attest to this. Like when you're on that sports team, like even if you don't really like him that much, the fact that y'all both have to be up at 6:30 doing this practice thing, like it makes me kind of connected to you because I know like there's a base level of like connection. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. So, man.
I guess like to that point too, like what had like since you mentioned like okay, when you leave college, there isn't as much of a connective tissue because you're not necessarily doing the same thing as the same people do like that entire time. Like, what have you found to I guess like one keep connection to the people that you met in college,
Yeah.
as well as like if you've been making new friends, how's that been working too?
Yeah. So I say what keeps me connected to, and to be honest, I'm gonna be honest, it gets harder and harder every year as we're getting older. People are starting to whether it's get married, start families, move to other countries, and then people's lives are just also going in different directions. So maintain, it's like you have to get more and more intentional each year to be able to keep those relationships or connections alive. But I would say momentous events keeps me connected. So things like if a friend is getting married, or if it's like a milestone birthday, or those kinds of scenarios. Like usually, those are times we obviously celebrate in person, but I feel like those a lot of times end up being reunions of sorts too, and
Mm.
it's been a lot of that, and then and then friends as well. I mean, I think in the workplace. So if you're working in a position, or I think now I'm noticing that the relationships I develop are largely connected to business now. So it's like I feel like people who I may connect with on a business relationship kind of tip that may become friends as a result of like working together. I feel like that's starting to happen more now than maybe previously. Yeah, man.
Real.
Yeah.
Loki, like speaking of business, like do you like it doesn't necessarily like have to be like a number like or whatever,
Mhm.
but I guess like do you have like an objective of like what you're trying to get out of it? Like if you were to say I had a successful business career, what does
Yeah,
that look like for you?
man. I think in general the way I look at it is the pursuit of the highest version of myself.
Mm.
Just like just really living up to my potential and like maximizing, you know, what God put me on this earth for. And so is there's not a specific number. I think earlier on, especially when I was younger too, it's like, you know, you want the world. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think as time goes on, for me, it's like I really love the game. Like
Mm.
I love it. I love this shit. Like I love um, and I'm also I have a lot of gratitude that I'm I've really followed my interests like very heavily and deeply that just day in and day out like I love what I do, and I think that when I first got into entrepreneurship there was you kind of have to like uh, get your mindset is so important, especially what I was coming from a space where it was a very like kind of linear track,
Mm.
and when I pivoted into the space I'm in now, uh, you can put in a lot of work, you can plant all these seeds, but you don't necessarily always know when you're going to be able to make the withdrawal metaphorically, or get or see the rewards or the fruits of your labor, if you will. And so be really like get into the mindset of falling in love with the process of what you're doing
Yeah.
is that was extremely huge. And I think that's just, you know, that's why I've sort of arrived at in that it's like I just love what I do, and I want to take it as far as um, humanly possible.
Real. I think I really resonate with that. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm.
Like if I were to give my own answer, I think like yeah, like the one I keep going back to is like my main objective out of this business stuff is like the freedom
Mm.
create without bounds or create without limit. Because
Mm.
first at first and slash it still is like this like step one to that objective is like okay, getting a base level of like financial comfort and like
For
security.
sure.
Because
For
that's
sure.
for too
For
long.
sure.
And like, I don't know, especially since like I got here, I had to sit there and think like, okay, what if I were to get all that money that I want, or like I were to get that external achievement, like, does it really, like, will it really fulfill you? Like, will you really be satisfied? And I
Yeah.
think, like, something else I really resonate with is like you mentioned how like it's the pursuit of your better self.
Yeah.
Like, it ties. I don't know if you want to like go into more depth with it, but I feel like it ties very heavily to the fact that the stuff you mentioned about the religious faith. Because I feel like to a degree, like we could get into this too. I guess like my relationship with faith is a bit like it's a winding road,
Yeah.
but like from some even my more devout friends, like something I hear a lot that I like aspire to is that like the pursuit of what would Jesus do, or like trying to be like holding yourself up to this like ideal that you know you're never going to fully catch, but always
Yeah.
try to better oneself. I really like
Mm.
that idea.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And I think to your point about uh, the fulfillment and what brings fulfillment versus what doesn't. I'm very into autobiographies, so
Mm,
I love reading people's autobiographies and kind of what their story was, how they came to do what they do, and but something that I feel that's recurring is you hear a lot of stories of people who achieved everything they wanted to in a material sense, but then didn't um, get the fulfillment that they thought it might have brought them. And I think I was I've been aware of that through my
mm.
journey. So I've known that what's going to bring the fulfillment is. I mean, I'm sure the material things. You know, I like nice things. So I'm not gonna lie, but like,
It definitely does. It does help.
right. But it's more so like, you know, who you're on the journey with, and the actual journey itself, and what,
Yeah.
you know, what you're doing, and you know the impact you're making, and those are the things that typically bring the joy. You know what I mean, and I think also to the faith conversations, can you say? I think most people, especially if, you know, you being honest, uh, like relationship with faith is a winding road. Like it's a journey, and I think, you know, mine has evolved over time, and I think, and I look at, I always look at what I'm going through. Again, it's like the season I'm in, uh, from a standpoint of like what it's also trying to teach me.
Mm.
And so like there's like the idea that everything is um, happening for you, rather than to you, and that's something like I really take that to heart.
Hmm. Man, real like that for you, not to you. Also,
Yeah.
something I've been like that helps me, I guess, is like that I don't got to do
Mm,
this. I get to do
mm,
like that
yeah,
gratitude, man.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
And so I was going to ask you like with that like that for you, not to you, like basically like when you end up going through something like that where like, the first instinct might be like, oh, all this stuff is happening, like I'm going through XYZ, like basically like when you run into rough patches, like what is your process, or like what is your like remedying tools, I guess, to like get yourself back on track?
Yeah. So always asking, what is it trying to teach me, is something that I do, um, like very intentionally. I'm very big into meditation as well. I meditate very frequently, and it definitely helps me get centered as well. Um, I would say that the what I do from a work standpoint as well, whether it's so we talked about building automation business, but I'm also into like investing, trading. Um, I really love these things. I really love those things. So just doing what brings me joy, as well, that I can get lost in
Yeah.
also. And I think that's probably the biggest like escaping them. And I'm also thankful that the things I can get lost in are also productive in a way for my life as well. But I say those three things.
Real.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna break them up into two questions. One is like, what is something that you changed your mind on recently? Because like mentioning how like, what is this thing trying to teach me? Like it's like, what's a recent lesson that you picked up from like a situation like that?
Mm. So you know what? So you know what I did the other day?
Hmm.
So 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 ChatGPT, you know, they just did an update for 4.0, and the update is that a part of the update is that it has access to more of the memory from you communicating with it. And so I actually put a query in asking it to uh, tell me, asking it to tell me what it knows about my psyche, and also to bring up things that may be uncomfortable for me to hear, uh, and but that I should know. And one of the things it brought up was that uh, it talked about how I thrive in the building phase. However, I have like a habit of building and then like moving on to the next thing, and not main maintaining and then really like allowing what I'm building to compound over time, which is where the a lot of the gains and the growth of what you look for comes from. And I understand, like, in an analytical sense, I got that's something I'm aware of, but on like a subconscious level, to know that I was like, man, it's reading me for filth right now. And so I think one of the things that I've definitely, I don't know if necessarily changed my mind on, but I'm definitely be intentional about more is just like being very very that's intentional about like maintaining what I'm doing, and not like moving on to like the next project or the next the next build, or like put the systems that are required in place in order to grow like what's becoming a little bit more predictable now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You just reminded me of a book I read. It's called King Warrior Magician Lover by
Mm,
Robert Moore, I believe. I apologize if I got the author wrong. But
mm,
like basically what it sounds like was mapping is like the difference between like a hero and king. Like a hero
mm.
is like I can slay the dragon, I can like get it set up or whatever. But
Yeah,
if you look at a lot of those hero stories, the hero like it stops like, okay, he saved the world, gets the princess, happily ever after.
yeah.
But maintaining the kingdom and like, oh, now you got to do
Mm.
taxes, or now you got to deal with like, oh, it's a different, it's like a different skill set. And I think like
Yeah,
when they mentioned like that, it really stuck out to me because like the overall premise of the book is like the transition from like boy to male psychology. And like I found myself, I'm ridiculously guilty of that. Of like, okay,
yeah,
I got this cool, like I did this, but it's like, is it
yeah.
fully optimized? Maybe not. But it's like, okay, this cool thing though. It's like,
Right, right. For sure, for sure, for sure.
I don't know, but I think like I need to go do that too. Or like go just ask like, what do you know about my psyche? Like, what is the glaring holes in my current setup?
Try it out. It's really interesting because it's like it was this level of and especially if you use ChatGPT a lot specifically,
Mm,
like because I use the voice feature, so I'll go back and forth. I think through ideas, like, and so I know it has a lot of
they
information
do.
on me, and yeah, it was really in depth, and that was part of it.
But then I was gonna also ask like, because like the meditation, yeah, the meditation stuff kind of like stuck my interest. I guess,
Yeah.
yeah, not necessarily other practices, but like, do you follow? Because like meditation, at least for me, it had been like I think I was first introduced to it through like like reading Tim Ferriss stuff, as well as like
Mm.
a podcast from someone named Charlie Hooper, who also follows them. That sort of, and like their, I guess, like philosophy and or like outlook on life to me seems characterized pretty heavily by like Stoic philosophy. So I was
Mm.
wondering like which, if you would even say that you like subscribe to any philosophies, or like I guess like branches of thought, like what have they been?
Yeah. Um, I'm not sure if this would be considered philosophy of thought, but I'm really a huge I connect a lot with Naval Ravikant.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Like a
yeah.
lot of his like readings, like uh, I have his like I think it's like called the what's that? Is it the anthropology? The whatever his book is called, that some he didn't write it, somebody else wrote it. I have it like on my coffee table, in my crib. Um, but I mean, I like stoicism too. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like very individualized. Like, I resonate with certain people more so. This is one pastor, Nigerian pastor, his name is Joshua Selman. I just resonate with his message. I think very high energy people in general. That's why I was always a big Meek Mill fan.
Real.
Yeah, people, like the whole, yeah, you say you're into hip hop, right? The whole like Kendrick Drake thing happening. People
Yeah.
will look at me and assume I'm a big Kendrick fan. I am. I think this whole thing that happened, like I'm like, oh wow, like the whole Pulitzer Prize winner thing makes sense now. But I've always been drawn to like just high energy people in general, and concerts. That's why I go to so many concerts as well. So I think in terms of philosophies, I kind of feel like I have a personal philosophy that I've been developing over time. But and then it's also partially influenced by just people I resonate with. Yeah,
Real. Hmm. I don't know. I'm kind of going off topic, but like I'm just thinking about the Drake and Kendrick beef overall.
yeah.
How do you feel? Because I don't know. I watched
That I open up Pandora's box.
just a little bit because I'm like, dang, bro, this low key got to be studied, bro. Because like it's not like it's Drake. He has like staying power. Like he could very much still have a career post this. But like in terms of like dismantling like what
Yeah,
I guess the persona that he tried to put up or like what he overall stood for, like meet the grams. Like, bro,
yeah.
he ended it with telling you to go do ayahuasca. I'm not gonna lie, that's a ridiculous game.
Oh man. Oh man.
Like, but yeah, I guess like what was your overall like view or like take on that?
So my view on it was that I felt like hip hop was becoming very uninspiring. Like
Mm,
I just I remember listening to all these guys' albums, Drake, Kendrick, and that was these guys were coming up at the same time when I was in school, college, into high school, and I was listening to these albums when I was studying all of that, and I just remember always getting inspiration from these albums and these artists. And I just felt like for a while that hip hop was just feeling not that inspiring. And I was feeling like these artists weren't inspired too. Like I felt like Drake is just making very uninspired music. I'm like, I feel like this was this is probably a hot take, probably a good thing for it. Like he probably got that inspiration back.
yeah.
And so what I liked about it was that part of it. I was like, this is high level rap right now. Like Kendrick from both sides, like Kendrick and Drake. This is that
Mm.
Kendrick's was, you know, beyond. But even what Drake was coming with, it was just good rapping. You know what I mean? And so that's why I like most from it. I think towards the end, obviously got a little ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely got a little ugly towards the end. But one thing I have to say, because obviously, it's can't be disputed that Kendrick, you know, won this
One.
and like completely finished it. But I will say one thing you got to give it up to Drake for is that I'm noticing this is something that's been very consistent throughout his career. No matter what happens, he just keeps going. Like he just put out his album this past Friday. Uh,
Yeah. Oh dang. That's crazy. But yeah, it's like that resilience. Like I'm still the machine
the, mach-
still keeps running though.
the universe keeps you know going around. I think that's like something to not go over our heads about. But yeah, I mean, as a hip hop fan and it's like a rap lover. Yeah, this was
It
man.
was eating good. I'm not gonna lie. Like it was a good little span. Like I remember. I'm not gonna lie. That's probably gonna end up as like a memory for years to come of like May
Yeah,
3rd, bro. Like
yeah,
that night, bro. I remember just like, oh wait, 30. He dropped again. He dropped
yeah,
again,
yeah,
bro.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I will never forget that. I will never forget that. Hip hop owes me nothing.
But okay, it's 1:57. I'm not gonna. I do gotta run back into the
You're
conference.
good, man. You're good. You're good. You're good.
But I
Yeah.
guess before I let you go, like if my bad, I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but I guess like any like quotes and or like words that have like stuck with you, or like I guess like you feel characterized this recent like season of your life.
Mm. I would say everything happens for you, not to you. Always ask yourself, what is this trying to teach you? Embrace the season that you're in, and you already know the answers that you're looking for. They're inside you, and so create what avenue you need, what system you need in order to get them out.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate your time.
So,
And one time, real quick, if you want to let people know where they could find you.
yeah, you find me pretty much most places on social media, Sir Akin B. And yeah, my company's called Pentridge Media, pentridgemedia.com. My YouTube, I got a YouTube channel I'm growing too. It's my full name on YouTube.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was wonderful. Pleasure meeting you. Wonderful talking to you. Would love to do this again.
You too, brother. Yeah, talk to you soon.